The Alliance patrol ship Starward glided through the darkness of space, its sleek blue hull gleaming under the light of distant stars. Captain Reed stood at the command center, his four-fingered hands clasped behind his back as he gazed at the large viewing screen. "Status report," he said, his voice calm and measured. Officer Jax, a tall green-skinned being with large eyes, looked up from his console. "All systems normal, Captain. We're approaching the edge of the neutral zone." Reed nodded. The neutral zone marked the border between Alliance space and the territory claimed by the Crescent Empire. Both sides watched this area closely. Neither wanted war, but neither trusted the other enough to leave the border unguarded. "Captain," called Science Officer Tella from her station. "Sensors are picking up something unusual ahead." Reed turned to look at the insectoid carrion. Tella's compound eyes reflected the light of her screen as her many-jointed fingers moved quickly across the controls. "What kind of unusual?" Reed asked. "A ship, sir. But..." She paused, mandibles clicking in confusion. "It doesn't match any known design in our database." Reed frowned. "Show me." The main screen changed to display a distant object floating in space. As the image zoomed in, Reed saw a strange-looking vessel. It was blocky and angular, with none of the smooth curves common to Alliance or Empire ships. It looked almost primitive, with visible plating and what appeared to be... Were those chemical thrusters? A small laugh escaped from communications. Officer Brell. "That can't be a real ship," he said. "It looks like something a child would build." Other officers joined in the laughter. The vessel did look absurd compared to their sleek, advanced ship. It had none of the elegant design or obvious weapon ports that marked modern space vessels. "Quiet," Reed ordered, though he smiled too. "Tella, any life signs?" Tella adjusted her instruments. "None that I can detect, Captain, but the ship's hull is made of some unusual alloy that might be interfering with our scans." Lieutenant Merrick, the security chief, stepped forward, his gray skin wrinkled with concern. "It could be a trap, sir. The Empire has been known to use decoys before." Reed considered this. "Any Empire ships in the area?" "None detected," Jaxie replied. "But we're close to the Scarlet Nebula. The gas clouds could hide a small fleet." Reed rubbed his chin thoughtfully. The ship didn't look dangerous. In fact, it looked like it belonged in a museum of early space travel. But appearances could be deceiving. "Take us closer," he decided, "but keep shields at maximum. If this is an Empire trick, I want us ready." The Starward moved toward the strange vessel, its engines humming quietly. As they approached, more details became visible. The ship was damaged. Black scorch marks marred one side, and a section of the hull appeared to have been blown open. "Weapons damage," Merrick noted. "Recent by the look of it." "Empire weapons?" Reed asked. "Consistent with their energy signatures," Tella confirmed. "But there's something else." She leaned closer to her screen. "I'm detecting unusual energy readings from inside the ship, unlike any power source I've seen before." Reed's interest grew. "Dangerous?" "Unknown, sir, but definitely not standard quantum drive technology." The officers exchanged worried glances. All advanced species used quantum drives. What kind of civilization would use anything else? "Look there." Jax pointed to markings visible on the ship's hull. "Some kind of writing." The screen zoomed in, on strange symbols painted on the side of the vessel. The ship's computer tried to translate but displayed an error message. "Unknown language?" Reed asked, surprised. The Alliance database contained every known language in explored space. "Apparently so," Tella replied. "Which suggests a new species." Reed finished her thought. This changed everything. First contact was both an exciting and dangerous prospect. The last new species discovered had been the warlike Vorn, who had attacked without warning. "I'm picking up something else," Tella said suddenly. "Some kind of automated beacon. Very weak." "Let's hear it," Reed ordered. Static filled the command center, then a voice, choppy and broken by interference. The words were strange, unlike any language they knew, but the tone was unmistakable. A distress call. Reed straightened his uniform. "It seems we have a rescue mission. Prepare a boarding party." "Sir," Merrick objected, "with all due respect, we don't know what's waiting in there. Standard protocol for unknown vessels would have us wait for a diplomatic team," Reed interrupted. "But that beacon is a distress call. Someone needs help and we're sworn to provide it, regardless of species." Merrick looked unhappy but nodded. "I'll lead the boarding party myself, sir." "No," Reed decided. "I'll go." He saw the surprise on his officers' faces. "This could be our first contact with a new civilization. As captain, it's my responsibility." An hour later, Reed stood in the shuttle bay with 5 officers all wearing protective suits. The strange ship had been pulled into the starward's docking area using tractor beams. Up close, the vessel looked even more primitive. The metal hull was thick and heavy, nothing like the lightweight materials used by the Alliance. There were what appeared to be actual windows, glass viewports rather than sensor arrays with digital displays. "Remember," Reed told his team, "we don't know what kind of beings built this ship or what conditions they live in. Stay alert." They approached the damaged section of the hull, which provided an entry point. As they floated through the breach, their suit lights illuminated a dark corridor. "Gravity's out," observed Engineer Val, a blue-skinned Tellarite. "Life support too," added Medical Officer Dorn. "Temperatures well below freezing." They pushed deeper into the ship, past rooms filled with strange equipment. Everything seemed designed for beings larger than most Alliance species. "These controls," Val said, examining a panel. "They're physical buttons and switches, not neural interfaces or even touch-sensitive. Whoever built this ship used manual controls. Primitives," someone muttered. Reed wasn't so sure. The design might be strange, but there was something solid about the ship. It had survived what looked like a serious attack, an attack that might have destroyed a more advanced vessel. They reached what appeared to be the command center. Large chairs faced forward toward dark screens. Everything was built on a scale slightly too large for comfort. "See if you can access their computer," Reed ordered Val. "I want to know who they are and what happened here." Val worked on a console while the others explored the room. Merrick discovered what looked like weapons, primitive projectile devices that used physical ammunition. "Captain," called Dorn suddenly, "you should see this." Reed floated over to where the medical officer was examining a dried substance on one of the chairs. "What is it?" "Blood," Dorn said. "But not like any I've seen before. Red, iron-based. Before." Reed could respond. Lights suddenly flickered on around them. Val jumped back from the console. "I didn't do that," she said. "The system activated on its own." A screen lit up, displaying symbols racing across it. Then a voice spoke. The same language they'd heard on the beacon. It sounded urgent, almost angry. "Get back to the shuttle," Reed ordered. "Now!" They hadn't reached the door when compartments in the walls opened, revealing what could only be defense systems. The team froze. "Nobody move," Reed whispered. The defense systems, gun-like objects, didn't fire. They seemed to be scanning the intruders. Slowly, one of the screens changed. The strange symbols were replaced by Alliance standard text. It was rough, like a basic translation. "Warning. Unauthorized personnel emergency protocols. Active USS Vanguard security system engaged. It's learning our language." Tella whispered in awe. The screen changed again, showing what looked like a logo, a blue circle with white stars and red stripes. Below it appeared new text. "Property of the United States of Earth Human Space Force." "Humans?" Reed read aloud. None of them had heard of such a species. An alarm began to sound, and the voice spoke again, this time with a few words in broken Alliance standard mixed with its own language. "Warning. Evacuation. System reboot. Distress signal activated." The ship shuddered around them. "Back to the shuttle now," Reed ordered. As they retreated, Reed glanced back at the command center. The screens were showing what looked like damage reports and system diagnostics. This ship, primitive as it seemed, was trying to repair itself. They barely made it back to their shuttle before the docking clamps that held the vessel released. The strange ship was breaking free. As they watched from the safety of the starward, the damaged vessel's engines glowed to life, not the clean blue of quantum drives, but an orange-red flame that looked like actual combustion. "Impossible," Val whispered. "They're using chemical rockets as backup propulsion." The ship moved slowly away, its systems clearly damaged but somehow still functioning. "Captain," Jax called over the comm, "we're receiving a transmission. A new ship is approaching at high speed, and it's identical in design to this one." Reed felt a chill that had nothing to do with the coldness of space. "Get us back to the ship, now." As their shuttle returned to the starward, Reed couldn't shake the feeling that they had stumbled onto something important. Humans. A species that built ships unlike any in known space. Ships that looked primitive and harmless, until they weren't, and more of them were coming. Captain Reed paced the command center of the starward, his 4 fingers tapping anxiously against his leg. The view screen showed 2 ships now, the damaged vessel they had boarded, and a new arrival that had appeared at the edge of their sensor range. "Status on the approaching ship?" Reed asked. Officer Jax worked his console. "Similar design to the first vessel, Captain, but larger. It's moving at surprising speed for such a bulky craft." "Are they responding to our hails?" "Communications officer." Brell shook his head. "Nothing on standard Alliance frequencies. I've tried all known communication protocols." Reed stopped pacing. "Lieutenant Merrick, battle stations." The security chief nodded and pressed an alarm. Throughout the ship, crew members rushed to their posts. "Sir?" Science Officer Tella spoke up, her insect-like mandibles clicking with excitement. "I've analyzed the data we collected from the damaged ship. The species calls themselves humans. They appear to be from a planet called Earth." "What else did you learn?" Reed asked. "Their technology is unusual. They don't use quantum drives or neural interfaces. Instead, they rely on nuclear fission and what they call computer systems with manual controls." The officers exchanged glances. Nuclear fission was ancient technology, abandoned by most species once they discovered cleaner energy sources. "What about weapons?" Merrick asked. "I detected what appear to be kinetic weapons. They use physical projectiles rather than energy. Also, explosive devices and some basic laser technology." Merrick laughed. "Projectile weapons? In space combat? They might as well throw rocks." Reed wasn't laughing. "They survived an encounter with the Crescent Empire. Don't underestimate them." The door slid open and Engineer Val rushed in. "Captain, I've been studying the scans from their ship. There's something everyone's missing." "Go on," Reed said. "Yes, their technology seems primitive compared to ours, but it's built differently." Val brought up a diagram on the main screen. "Look at the hull, it's incredibly thick. Multiple redundant systems, backup after backup. Their ship isn't elegant, but it's..." She searched for the word. "Stubborn." "Stubborn?" Brell asked with a smile. "It's designed to take damage and keep functioning," Val explained. "Our ships avoid damage with shields and maneuverability. Theirs absorbs it." Reed considered this. A different approach to the same problem. "Exactly," Val nodded. "And that's not all. The ship's internal atmosphere. It's oxygen-rich with pressure and gravity settings much higher than Alliance standard. These humans must be physically adapted to conditions most species would find uncomfortable." Before anyone could respond, Jax called out, "Captain, the approaching ship is hailing us. They figured out our communication system." "On screen," Reed ordered. The view screen flickered and showed an image that made several officers gasp. The being on screen looked almost like a Tyranny, but with less pronounced facial ridges and strange, rounded ears. Its skin was pale and it had fur on top of its head. It wore what appeared to be a uniform with markings on the shoulders. "This is Captain Tom Walker of the Earth Defense Force Vessel Defender," the being said in accented but understandable Alliance standard. "You have our rescue ship. We want it back. Now." Reed stepped forward. "I am Captain Reed of the Alliance vessel Starward. We found your ship damaged and adrift. We boarded with peaceful intentions to offer assistance." The human's expression didn't change. Then you won't mind returning it and any crew you found? We found no crew, Reed explained. The ship was empty, but its defense systems activated when we were exploring. It's currently moving away from our position. For the first time, the human showed emotion. Concern flashed across its face. The Vanguard activated its emergency protocols? Did you access its systems? Our engineer was attempting to learn more about your vessel, Reed admitted. Captain Walker shook his head. The Vanguard was damaged rescuing a transport ship from Empire raiders. Its AI is in protection mode. If you triggered its defenses, it's now transmitting a distress signal to all human ships in the sector. Reed felt a chill. How many human ships are in this sector? Enough, Walker replied simply. I suggest we both pursue the Vanguard before its damaged systems create a bigger problem. With your permission, I'll send over my engineer to explain how to safely approach it. Reed hesitated. This would be the first human to board the Starward. We're not familiar with your species' biology or requirements, he said carefully. Walker smiled for the first time. Don't worry, we can survive in most environments. Humans are adaptable. After ending the transmission, Reed called an emergency meeting with his senior officers. I don't like this, Merrick said immediately. We know nothing about these humans. Which is why this is an opportunity, Tella countered. First contact with a new spacefaring species. Reed listened to the debate. Some viewed the humans as primitive and therefore harmless. Others saw them as potential threats precisely because they were unknown. They said they were rescuing a transport from Empire raiders, Reed noted. That suggests they oppose the Empire. Or it could be misdirection, Merrick argued. A trick to gain our trust. The discussion was interrupted when Jax reported that a small shuttle had launched from the human ship and was requesting permission to dock. Decision time, Reed said, looking around at his officers. We can refuse and potentially create an incident with a new species, or we can follow first contact protocols and welcome them aboard. In the end, curiosity won out over caution. The human shuttle was allowed to dock, and Reed went with Merrick and Tella to greet their visitor. The docking bay doors opened to reveal a single figure in what appeared to be a simple environmental suit. It was bulkier than Alliance suits, less elegant, but functional. The human removed its helmet. This one had different coloring than Captain Walker. Darker skin and different facial features, though the same general structure. It had long black fur tied back from its face. Lieutenant Jack Ross, Earth Defense Force, the human said with a small bow. Engineer specializing in AI systems. You're smaller than I expected, Merrick blurted out, looking up at the human who stood a head taller than any of them. Jack smiled. I'm actually considered average height for a human. Reed stepped forward. We're pleased to welcome you aboard, Lieutenant Ross. This is my science officer, Tella, and security chief, Merrick. The human looked at each of them with obvious curiosity, but maintained a professional demeanor. Thank you for your help with the Vanguard. That ship has already been through enough trouble. As they walked through the corridors of the Starward, Ross looked around with interest. Beautiful ship, very streamlined. Unlike yours, Merrick said, not bothering to hide his judgment. Ross didn't seem offended. Human ships are built with different priorities. We focus on durability and redundancy. Because you expect to be damaged? Tella asked. We plan for worst-case scenarios, Ross replied. It's saved our lives more than once. In the command center, Engineer Val joined them, her blue skin flushing slightly darker with excitement at meeting the human engineer. The Vanguard's AI is called Lisa, Ross explained, bringing up diagrams on a portable device. When damaged, she reverts to core programming. Protect the ship, protect any data, and call for help. She? Reed asked. Just a convention. Lisa stands for Logical Intelligence Support Architecture. When she detected unknown beings accessing her systems, she initiated defense protocols. Can you shut her down remotely? Val asked. Ross shook his head. Not when she's in protection mode. We need to physically access her core, but approaching the ship while she's defensive will be tricky. If she's protecting the ship, why did she break away from ours? Reed asked. To lead potential threats away from her location while broadcasting for help, Ross explained. It's a standard evasion protocol. As they discussed strategy, an alarm suddenly blared through the starward. "Captain," Jax called from his station. "5 ships just appeared at the edge of the system. Crescent Empire signatures." The view screen showed 5 sleek, crescent-shaped vessels moving into formation. "They must have been tracking the Vanguard," Ross said grimly. "Empire forces have been hunting our rescue ships for months." "Why would they hunt rescue ships?" Reed asked, confused. Ross's expression hardened. "Because we help anyone who needs it, including ships the Empire would rather see destroyed. They consider us interfering." "We're being hailed by the Empire flagship," Brell announced. "Put them through," Reed ordered. The screen changed to show a stern-faced Empire commander. "Alliance vessel," the commander said coldly. "You are harboring a human ship in neutral space. Surrender it immediately." Reed felt all eyes on him. His response would set the tone for whatever happened next. "The human vessel is under our protection," he said firmly, surprising even himself. "They assisted us with a rescue operation." The Empire commander's face darkened. "Then you have chosen to ally with these primitives. Be warned. Their vessels may look harmless, but these humans are more dangerous than you know." As the transmission ended, Reed looked at Ross, seeing the human in a new light. "It seems we have common enemies, Lieutenant," he said. "Perhaps it's time you told us exactly why the Empire considers humans so dangerous." The command center of the starward was silent. All eyes moved between Captain Reed and the human engineer Jack Ross. Outside, the 5 Crescent Empire ships moved into attack formation. "We have 2 minutes before they're in firing range, Lieutenant," Merrick reported. Reed turned to Ross. "You heard the Empire, Commander. Why do they consider humans dangerous?" Ross ran a hand through his dark hair. "It's a long story, but the short version is that we don't back down when they threaten weaker ships. Most species avoid conflict with the Empire. Humans don't." "Don't or can't?" Tella asked, her compound eyes gleaming with curiosity. "Both," Ross admitted. "Earth was never invited to join the Alliance. We're newcomers to this part of space. We didn't know the rules." He smiled slightly. "By the time we learned about the power balance between the Alliance and Empire, we'd already made our choice." "Captain," Brell interrupted. "The Defender is hailing us." The screen changed to show Captain Walker's face. "Captain Reed, I see our friends from the Empire have arrived. I'm sure they've told you humans are dangerous and should be avoided." "That was mentioned," Reed replied dryly. "What they didn't tell you is why they think that." Walker's expression grew serious. 3 months ago, a human colony ship accidentally strayed into what the Empire considers their territory. They disabled it and were boarding when a human rescue vessel responded. "The Vanguard?" Reed guessed. Walker nodded. "1 ship against 3 Empire cruisers. The Vanguard took heavy damage but managed to hold them off long enough for the colony ship to escape. The Empire hasn't forgotten that humiliation." "1 small ship against 3 cruisers?" Merrick asked skeptically. "How?" "We're stubborn," Walker said with a grim smile. "And we don't fight according to the rules they expect." "Captain," Jax called out, "the Empire ships are charging weapons." Reed made his decision. "Lieutenant Ross, return to your ship. Brell informed the Empire that we're not surrendering anyone. Merrick, shields at maximum." "Sir," Merrick objected, "the Starward isn't a warship. We're outgunned." "We're also not cowards," Reed replied firmly. "And we don't abandon people who need help." As Ross hurried back to the shuttle bay, Reed ordered the Starward to move between the Defender and the approaching Empire ships. It was a statement, the Alliance vessel choosing a side. "Captain," Tella called suddenly, "I'm detecting more ships entering the system." Reed's heart sank. If the Empire had called reinforcements, they had no chance. But when the screen showed the new arrivals, they weren't the sleek crescents of the Empire. They were blocky, angular vessels with thick hulls and visible weapon mounts. Human ships, 3 of them moving in fast. "Sir," Brell reported with surprise, They're broadcasting on all frequencies, including Empire channels. Message reads, "This is Human Defense Force Squadron 7. We are responding to a distress call. Any hostile action against Alliance or human vessels will be met with appropriate force." Reed couldn't hide his surprise. They're challenging the Empire openly, with just 3 ships? The comm system activated and Captain Walker appeared again, looking almost apologetic. "Sorry about this. When a human ship sends a distress call, we tend to come running. I hope you don't mind the company." Before Reed could respond, a new transmission came through, from the human squadron commander. "This is Commander James of the HDF Determination. Captain Reed, we've been monitoring the situation. Your protection of the Defender is appreciated. What's your status?" The straightforwardness of the human surprised Reed. No diplomatic dancing, just direct questions. "We're outgunned but holding position. The damaged vessel Vanguard is moving away on autopilot." "Understood. We'll handle the Empire ships if they push. Squadron 7 specializes in discouraging bullies." The Empire commander's face appeared on a split screen, now looking less confident. "This is not your concern, Alliance. These humans have violated Empire territory repeatedly. They refuse to follow established protocols." "What protocols are those?" Commander James cut in. "The ones where you attack civilian transports, or the ones where you claim new territories without negotiation?" The exchange was interrupted by an urgent call from engineering. Val's blue face appeared on a side screen. "Captain, I've been analyzing the readings from the Vanguard. Its reactor is becoming unstable. If it continues on its current course, it could detonate in 30 minutes. A detonation of a nuclear fission reactor? Tella started calculating. The radiation burst could affect every ship in this sector. The human ships immediately changed formation. 2 moved to intercept the drifting Vanguard while the Defender and 1 other maintained position between the Alliance ship and the Empire vessels. "Captain Reed," Commander James called. "We need to deal with the Vanguard immediately. Can your ship assist? We could use your tractor beams to stabilize it while our engineers work." Reed didn't hesitate. "Of course, the Empire will have to wait." To Reed's surprise, the Empire commander didn't object. Even they recognized the danger of a reactor explosion. Instead, their ships pulled back to a safe distance, watching. As the Starward moved toward the drifting human vessel, Reed called a quick meeting with his senior officers. "I need options for stabilizing that ship," he said. Engineer Val spoke first. "Their nuclear reactor design is strange to us, but the principles should be similar to early Alliance technology. If we can get close enough, we might be able to help contain the reaction." "It's too dangerous," Merrick argued. "The radiation would kill anyone who boarded." Ross, who had remained on the Starward at Reed's request, shook his head. "Not humans. We can handle radiation exposure better than most species, at least for short periods. Our bodies evolved on a planet with higher background radiation than many worlds." "That's advantageous," Tella noted, fascinated. "Only if you need to survive on harsh worlds," Ross replied. "Which we often do." Reed made his decision. "Val, you'll work with the human engineers. Tella, coordinate with their science team. Merrick, keep an eye on the Empire ships." The next 20 minutes were tense. The Starward used its tractor beams to hold the damaged Vanguard steady while human engineers in heavy protection suits worked to stabilize its reactor. Val coordinated from the Starward, exchanging technical information with the human team. "They're using coolant methods I've never seen before," she reported with professional admiration. "Improvising with available materials." "Is it working?" Reed asked. "Yes," Val replied, surprised. "It shouldn't be, but it is. They're essentially tricking the reactor into a controlled shutdown by... It's hard to explain. Their approach isn't in any technical manual I've studied." Ross smiled. "That's because humans write the manual after we figure out what works, not before." Finally, the human team reported success. The reactor was stabilizing. The immediate danger had passed. As the Alliance and human ships regrouped, Reed received a request for a face-to-face meeting. Not just from Captain Walker and Commander James, but from a new arrival, a diplomatic vessel that had entered the system during the crisis. "They're asking to come aboard," Brell reported. One representative from their diplomatic corps. Reed agreed, curious to meet another human. When the diplomatic shuttle docked, Reed was surprised to see a human female step out. She wore a simple blue uniform with minimal markings and her posture was formal but relaxed. Ambassador Kelly Bishop, she introduced herself with a slight bow. Thank you for having me aboard, Captain Reed. Reed led her to the conference room, where the senior officers gathered. The Empire commander had also been invited and sat stiffly at one end of the table, flanked by two of his officers. This situation has escalated unnecessarily, Ambassador Kelly began, but it has also created an opportunity. The Earth Defense Force has been operating in this sector for 2 years, primarily as a rescue service for ships in distress. Interfering in Empire security operations, the Empire commander corrected coldly. Kelly turned to him, unfazed. Let's be honest, Commander. When you disable civilian ships for security inspections, people tend to disappear. We simply offer an alternative. She turned back to Reed. We've avoided formal contact with the Alliance because we weren't sure of our welcome. Humans are new to interstellar politics. New and disruptive, the Empire commander muttered. Yes, Kelly agreed, surprising him. We are disruptive. Humans have a history of standing up to bullies, even when it's dangerous to do so. She looked directly at Reed. The question is, does the Alliance value that trait or fear it? Reed considered the events of the past hours. The humans had come to rescue their damaged ship without hesitation. They had stood against the Empire despite being outnumbered, and they had risked their lives to prevent a disaster that would have affected everyone. Ambassador, Reed replied carefully, I think it's time the Alliance learned more about humans, officially. Kelly smiled. I was hoping you'd say that, because there's something else you should know about humans. She activated a small projector that displayed a map of the sector. We've been establishing rescue outposts here, and here, all along the border regions where ships often go missing. The Empire commander stood up angrily. Those are strategic locations. Yes, Kelly replied calmly. Strategic for saving lives. As the Empire commander stormed out, Reed looked at the map with new understanding. The humans hadn't just been rescuing ships. They'd been creating a buffer zone between Alliance space and the Empire. Why? He asked simply. Kelly's expression grew serious. Because someone needs to stand in the dangerous places, Captain, and humans, well, we've had a lot of practice with danger. The Starwards conference room had become the center of an unlikely gathering. Captain Reed sat with his senior officers, still processing Ambassador Kelly's revelations about human activities in the border regions. The Empire delegation had left in anger, but their ships remained in the system, watching from a distance. You've been busy, Reed said to Kelly. 2 years of rescue operations without official contact with the Alliance. Kelly nodded. We thought it best to establish ourselves first. Actions speak louder than words. A human saying? Tella asked, her mandibles clicking with interest. Yes, Kelly smiled. We have many like it. The door slid open, and Engineer Val entered with Lieutenant Ross. Both looked tired but satisfied. The Vanguard systems are stable, Val reported. We've managed to download its logs. Reed gestured to the main screen. Let's see what this ship was doing when it was attacked. The screen lit up with images that made several officers gasp. It showed the Vanguard positioning itself between a small civilian transport and 3 Empire cruisers. The transport was damaged, drifting helplessly as Empire weapons fired upon it. The Vanguard, despite its smaller size, charged directly at the lead Empire ship, not firing weapons, but simply accelerating toward it at dangerous speed. What are they doing? Merrick asked in disbelief. That's suicide, Ross shook his head. It's called a bluff. The Empire captain had to choose between continuing the attack on the transport or avoiding a collision. On screen, the Empire ship veered away at the last moment. The Vanguard used the confusion to deploy some kind of energy field around the transport, protecting it from further attacks. That's not standard shield technology, Tella observed. No, Ross confirmed. It's an experimental emergency barrier. One-time use burns out the projectors, but it bought enough time for the transport to restart its engines. The recording continued, showing the Vanguard taking heavy damage as it covered the transport's escape. Its hull was breached multiple times, but its systems kept functioning. Look at the reactor readings, Val pointed. Any Alliance ship would have shut down after taking that much damage to its power core. Human ships are designed to keep working even when critically damaged, Ross explained. It's not elegant, but it keeps us alive. Reed watched as the Vanguard finally broke away from the battle, its engines flaring erratically. The ship was clearly crippled but still moving under its own power. The crew? Reed asked quietly. Ross's face grew solemn. Evacuation pods launched before the worst damage. The Empire ships ignored them. Standard practice, unfortunately. Our rescue ships picked them up later. One small ship against 3 cruisers, Merrick said, echoing his earlier skepticism, but now his voice held a note of respect. And they actually succeeded. At great cost, Kelly added. But yes. Reed studied the human ambassador. You said someone needs to stand in the dangerous places. Is that what humans do? It's what we've always done, Kelly replied. On Earth, throughout our history, there were always people who ran toward danger rather than away from it. Firefighters who entered burning buildings, aid workers who went to disaster zones, pilots who flew into storms to rescue stranded ships. Your entire species does this? Tella asked skeptically. Kelly laughed. No, not everyone, but enough of us. When we came to space and saw what was happening in these border regions, ships disappearing, refugees with nowhere to go, we couldn't just watch. Before anyone could respond, an alarm blared through the ship. Captain, Jax's voice came, over the comm. The Empire ships are moving into attack formation. Everyone rushed to the bridge. On the main screen they saw the 5 crescent-shaped vessels advancing, weapons charged. They're targeting the Defender and our rescue squadron, Jax reported. Hail them, Reed ordered. The Empire commander appeared on screen, his expression cold. This conversation is over. The humans have violated our territory for the last time. Any ship that stands with them will be considered an enemy of the Empire. The transmission cut off abruptly. Reed turned to Kelly. What can your ships do against 5 cruisers? Fight hard and die well, she replied grimly. But we won't run. Neither will we, Reed decided, surprising his officers. Battle stations. As the crew prepared for combat, Reed pulled Kelly aside. I need to know our chances. Kelly's expression was serious. Human ships are tough, but we're outnumbered. The Vanguard is still damaged and the Starward isn't built for combat. So we lose, Reed concluded. Probably, Kelly admitted. Unless what? Unless we can access the Vanguard's data core. It recorded the Empire ship's shield frequencies during the previous engagement. That might give us an advantage. Reed immediately called Val and Ross to the bridge. Can you get that data from the Vanguard? Maybe, Ross said. But we'd need to board it again, and its defense systems are still active. I'll go, Val volunteered. I've studied their systems now. It's too dangerous, Ross objected. The radiation levels are still high from the reactor instability. Val's blue skin darkened with determination. You said humans can handle radiation for short periods. So can Tellarites. Our homeworld has 3 suns. We evolved with high radiation tolerance. Reed looked at the approaching Empire ships. You have 10 minutes. While Val and Ross took a shuttle to the damaged Vanguard, the other ships moved into defensive positions. The 3 human rescue ships formed a front line, with the Defender and Starward behind them. They're sacrificing themselves. To protect us, Tella observed. No, Reed replied, understanding at last. They're buying time. On the screen they watched the Empire ships approaching. The lead cruiser fired a warning shot that flashed past the human squadron. Human ships are not returning fire, Jax reported. Sounding surprised, they're waiting, Reed realized. Conserving power, Commander James's voice came over the comm. Captain Reed, we can hold them for 5 minutes, maybe less. After that it gets messy. Understood, Commander. Our team is working on a solution. The Empire ships fired again, this time striking the shields of the lead human vessel. The ship shuddered but maintained position. Their shields are holding, Merrick noted with surprise. How? Differently designed, Reed replied, remembering what he'd learned. Not to deflect, but to absorb. Another blast hit the human ships, stronger this time. One of the vessels visibly rocked from the impact, but its return fire was precise, targeting the same spot on the lead Empire cruiser repeatedly. They're not trying to destroy it, Tella observed. They're wearing down its shields in one location. Captain, Brell called out. Val and Ross are reporting success. They've transmitted the shield frequency data. Tella immediately began analyzing the information. These readings are remarkable. The Empire ships cycle their shield frequencies, but there's a pattern, a momentary vulnerability when they switch. Can we exploit that? Reed asked. Yes, but only with precisely timed shots. Reed opened a channel to all ships. Commander James, Ambassador Kelly, we have the shield data. On my mark, target these coordinates with everything you've got. The next moments were tense as Tella calculated the exact timing. The Empire ships continued advancing, their weapons charging for a full barrage. They're preparing to fire all weapons, Merrick warned. Time the shots. Now, Tella called. Every Alliance and human ship fired simultaneously, their weapons converging on the same point on the lead Empire cruiser's shields, just as they cycled to a new frequency. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The combined attack punched through the momentary weakness, striking the ship's primary weapon array. The cruiser's lights flickered and it drifted out of formation. Direct hit, Jax reported with excitement. The other Empire ships hesitated, clearly surprised by the precision of the attack. Again, Reed ordered. Next target. They repeated the maneuver on the second cruiser with similar results. This time, the remaining Empire ships began to pull back. They're retreating, Merrick said in disbelief. No, Reed corrected him. They're regrouping. This isn't over. But before the Empire could reorganize, new alarms sounded. Captain, Jax called, his voice filled with awe. More ships entering the system, a lot more. The view screen showed at least 15 vessels of various designs, all with the now familiar, blocky, angular look of human ships. The cavalry has arrived, Kelly said with a smile. When a human distress call goes unanswered for too long, we tend to send everyone available. The Empire cruisers, now faced with overwhelming numbers, began a full retreat. As the tension on the bridge eased, Reed turned to Ambassador Kelly. You never mentioned you had this many ships in the sector. You never asked, Kelly replied simply. Humans may look like we're standing alone in dangerous places, Captain Reed, but we're rarely actually alone. Reed looked at the screen filled with human vessels. Ships that had once seemed primitive and laughable. No one was laughing now. I think, Reed said slowly, that the Alliance Council needs to hear about everything that happened here, and about the true value of having dangerous allies. 2 weeks after the encounter with the Empire ships, Captain Reed stood in the Grand Chamber of the Alliance Council. The circular room was filled with representatives from over 30 species, all seated according to their planet's status in the Alliance hierarchy. Reed had just finished presenting his report on the events in the neutral zone. He described finding the damaged human ship, the confrontation with the Empire forces, and the effective cooperation between the Alliance and human vessels. In conclusion, Reed said, I believe formal recognition of human presence in border regions would benefit the Alliance. Their rescue operations have saved countless lives, including many Alliance citizens. The council chamber filled with murmurs. Not everyone seemed convinced. Councillor Varn, a tall, gray-skinned diplomat, stood to speak. These humans operate unusual vessels, engage in risky maneuvers, and have already provoked the Empire. Is bringing such a volatile species into our sphere wise? With respect, Councillor, Reed replied. It was the Empire that attacked first, both the human rescue ship and the civilian transport it was protecting. But you admit the humans charged directly at an Empire cruiser, another councillor pointed. By such aggressive tactics could escalate tensions. Before Reed could respond, the chamber doors opened. Ambassador Kelly entered, accompanied by Captain Walker and, surprisingly, Engineer Val. The council head, an elderly Solari with gleaming silver skin, acknowledged them. The council recognizes Ambassador Kelly of Earth. You may address this gathering. Kelly stepped forward. Her simple blue uniform stood out among the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor of the council members. Thank you for allowing me to speak, she began. I understand your concerns about human involvement in border regions. Our ships are different. Our tactics are unconventional. And yes, we sometimes take risks that others might avoid. She activated a holographic display in the center of the room. It showed a map of the border between Alliance and Empire space. For the past 2 years, human ships have operated in these regions, she continued, highlighting several areas. In that time, civilian ship disappearances have decreased by 63%. Refugee transports reaching safe harbors have increased by 70%. The council members studied the data with interest. How have you achieved this? The council head asked. By being where we're needed most, Kelly replied simply, and by being willing to do what others cannot, or will not, do. Captain Walker stepped forward. The Empire preys on those they perceive as weak. They expect ships to flee or surrender. Human vessels do neither. This disrupts their standard tactics. Counselor Varn frowned. You deliberately provoke the Empire? No. Walker shook his head. We simply refuse to abandon those who need help, even when helping is dangerous. Engineer Val spoke next, surprising Reed. If I may address the council, I've worked directly with human engineers and have studied their technology. What at first appeared primitive to me is actually purposefully designed for extreme conditions. She brought up technical schematics of the Vanguard. Human ships have redundant systems that allow them to function even when severely damaged. Their hulls are thicker than necessary by our standards, but provide protection in situations where shields fail. Their power systems prioritize stability over efficiency. These sound like warships, one counselor observed with concern. No, Val corrected. They're survivor ships, built to endure, not to conquer. The difference is important. The council debated among themselves while Reed, Kelly, Walker, and Val waited. Finally, the council head raised a hand for silence. A question for Captain Reed, he said. You initially described the human vessel as primitive and laughable. What changed your assessment? Reed thought carefully before answering. I witnessed their actions, not just their appearance. The Vanguard sustained damage that would have destroyed an Alliance vessel, yet continued its mission. When the Empire threatened us, the humans stood their ground despite being outnumbered. They value lives over technology, courage over caution, and action over words. He looked at Kelly and Walker. I learned that sometimes being dangerous is necessary when facing dangerous threats. The humans aren't dangerous because they seek conflict. They're dangerous because they refuse to abandon others to their fate, no matter the risk to themselves. The council chambers grew quiet as his words sank in. We have much to consider, the council head finally said. Ambassador Kelly, would you be willing to share more details about human rescue operations? Kelly nodded. Of course. We're also prepared to coordinate our efforts with Alliance patrols, if you're willing to work with us. As the formal proceedings continued, Reed stepped back. He found himself standing next to Tella, who had been called to provide scientific testimony. They're actually considering it, Tella said quietly, her mandibles clicking with excitement. Formal cooperation with humans. They should, Reed replied. We need them. Need their dangerous ships, you mean? Tella asked with amusement. Need their determination, Reed corrected, and their willingness to stand in dangerous places. The council's discussion continued for hours. Finally, they reached a decision. The council head stood to address the chamber. After careful consideration, the Alliance Council proposes establishing human response units along the border regions. These units will consist of human and Alliance ships working together to protect civilian vessels and respond to distress calls. This arrangement will be provisional for 1 standard year, after which we will reassess. Ambassador Kelly accepted with a formal bow. Earth thanks you for your trust. We will not disappoint you. Later, at a small gathering to celebrate the new arrangement, Reed found himself speaking with Kelly and Walker. The council members who oppose this decision still think your ships are too primitive and your tactics too reckless, Reed told them. Walker smiled. Let them think that. Being underestimated has its advantages. Besides, Kelly added, we're not here to impress anyone with our technology. We're here to save lives. Engineer Val joined them, accompanied by Lieutenant Ross. The human and Tellarite had developed a close professional relationship while working to repair the Vanguard. We've been comparing notes on ship design, Val said. I think a hybrid approach could be interesting. Alliance efficiency with human redundancy. A dangerous combination, Ross replied with a smile. Speaking of the Vanguard, Reed asked, what will happen to it now? Repairs are almost complete, Walker said. It's being refitted as the first official human response unit vessel. The Alliance is providing some upgraded components. And the crew? Reed asked. Mixed, Kelly replied. Human and Alliance volunteers. Your engineer Val has already signed. Up. Reed looked at Val in surprise. She shrugged, her blue skin darkening slightly in the Tellarite equivalent of a blush. Someone needs to make sure they don't blow themselves up with their primitive nuclear reactors, she said, but her tone was affectionate. As the gathering continued, Reed found himself by a viewport, looking out at the space station's docking area. The Vanguard was visible, undergoing repairs. Its blocky shape and thick hull no longer seemed primitive to him, just different, designed for a different purpose, with different priorities. Ambassador Kelly joined him at the viewport. Having second thoughts about supporting us? She asked. Reed shook his head. No, just reflecting on first impressions. Let me guess, Kelly said with a knowing smile. You thought our ships looked harmless. Worse, Reed admitted. We laughed at them. Kelly's smile widened. Everyone does at first, until they realize those primitive ships are exactly what you want beside you when everything goes wrong. As if on cue, an alarm sounded throughout the station. A voice came over the communication system. Attention all vessels. We have received a distress call from a transport near the Scarlet Nebula. Empire raiders reported in the area. Reed and Kelly exchanged a glance. The Starward can be ready in 20 minutes, Reed said. The Vanguard is already powering up, Kelly replied. Repairs or no repairs, it can fly. As they hurried to their ships, Reed thought about how quickly things had changed. 2 weeks ago he had laughed at a strange-looking vessel adrift in space. Now he was rushing to join it on a rescue mission. The dangers hadn't changed. The Empire was still a threat. The border regions were still contested. But now, standing in those dangerous places, the Alliance ships wouldn't be alone. They would have their dangerous allies. The humans who ran toward trouble rather than away from it. The humans whose ships might look primitive and laughable until you needed them most, and no one was laughing anymore. The message repeated itself over and over, filling the grand chamber of the Galactic Council with soft, desperate words. This is Haven Colony. We are under attack. Please help us. The raiders have taken our outer settlements. They are moving toward our central cities. We cannot fight them. Please, anyone, help us. The voice belonged to a Lumen, one of the gentle light beings who had settled the distant world they called Haven. Their kind was known throughout the galaxy for their wisdom and peaceful ways. They were also known for having no defenses. Ambassador Gray stood before the curved table where the 12 senior council members sat. His thin fingers tapped nervously on his datapad as the message played again. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. None wanted to speak first. The message has been repeating for 3 days, Gray finally said. The Void Raiders have likely taken half the planet by now. Admiral Pike, the only military officer present, nodded grimly. The Raiders never leave survivors. They take what they want: resources, artifacts, slaves, and destroy everything else. The head counselor, an ancient being with skin like polished wood, leaned forward. We all feel for the Lumen, but Haven is at the edge of known space. None of our peacekeeping forces could reach them in time. Gray had expected this answer. It was the same one he had received from every species he had approached over the last 72 hours. The Orad could not send ships because of their religious holiday. The Mindari were in the middle of their hibernation cycle. The Ziv simply did not have military vessels. There is one option we haven't tried, Gray said carefully. He knew his next words would not be welcome. Earth. The chamber went silent. Even the distress call seemed to fade into the background. The humans. The head counselor's voice was barely above a whisper. You cannot be serious. They have ships, fast ones. Their planet is closer to Haven than any of our homeworlds. And they are barbarians, interrupted Counselor Thren, her feathered crest rising in agitation. They come from a Class 12 death world. Do you know what that means, Ambassador? Their planet tried to kill them every day of their evolution. And instead of dying like sensible creatures, they fought back and won. Admiral Pike cleared his throat. Counselor Thren is not wrong about their nature. But the humans do have one unusual trait. They respond to distress signals. Always. It's almost a compulsion for them. Gray nodded quickly. It's true. In the 5 years since Earth joined the Council, they've diverted their ships 11 times to answer distress calls from species they've never even met. And in doing so, they've engaged in violence each time. Counselor Thren countered. Only against aggressors, Pike said. Never against the ones who called for help. The head counselor raised a hand for silence. Even if we decided to request their aid, what could one planet do? The Void Raiders have a fleet. Pike and Gray exchanged a look. It was Pike who answered. The humans don't fight like the rest of us, he said simply. They're different. The council chamber erupted in overlapping voices, some curious, some outraged. The head counselor finally restored order by activating the room's attention chime. We will put it to a vote, the head counselor declared. Should we formally request Earth's assistance for the Lumen of Haven? The vote was close, 7 for, 5 against. Gray felt relief wash over him, though he knew many would criticize this decision. He quickly drafted the formal request and sent it through the special channel established for communication with Earth. The council members waited in uneasy silence. Most expected a delayed response or a polite refusal. Earth had kept to itself since joining the galactic community, sending only a few representatives who rarely spoke at meetings. The reply came just 3 minutes later. SOS acknowledged. HMS Nemesis en route. ETA 72 hours. Gray read the message, aloud, and the council members looked at each other in confusion. HMS? Asked the head counselor. It stands for His Majesty's ship, Admiral Pike explained. A traditional designation for their vessels. But, Nemesis? I'm not familiar with that ship. A junior aide hurried into the chamber and whispered something. To Pike. The Admiral's eyes widened slightly. Well? Prompted Counselor Thren. The Nemesis is not listed in Earth's registered civilian fleet, Pike said slowly. It's a military vessel. A destroyer, specifically. The chamber went completely silent. They're sending a warship? The head counselor's voice was faint with disbelief. Not aid workers or diplomats or peacekeepers, but an actual warship? I believe, Pike said carefully, that the humans have interpreted our request in their own way. They see a people under attack and they're responding with protection. Protection? Counselor Thren scoffed. Is that what they call it? They're sending an instrument of death. Gray looked down at his datapad, where the simple human message, still displayed, just 3 lines. Direct, efficient. No diplomacy, no hesitation, no questions asked. Simply, we heard you, we're coming. We'll be there in 3 days. We should alert the Lumen, Gray suggested. Tell them help is coming. Are we sure it is help? Asked the head counselor. Perhaps we should clarify with Earth exactly what their intentions are. Admiral Pike shook his head. The Nemesis has already departed Earth space at full speed. They won't stop for clarification. Another aide entered and handed Pike a data crystal. The Admiral inserted it into the chamber's projector, and a holographic image appeared in the center of the room. It showed a ship unlike any the council members had seen before. Sleek, black, with no visible weapons but somehow radiating menace. "This is the only known image of the Nemesis," Pike explained. "Taken during a joint exercise last year. Earth doesn't share specifications of their military vessels." "It looks predatory," whispered a counselor. "Admiral," the head counselor said, "in your professional opinion, what exactly will happen when this ship reaches haven?" Pike studied the rotating image, his expression unreadable. "The humans have a saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. It means to negotiate peacefully while having powerful force in reserve." He gestured to the image of the Nemesis. "This, council members, is a very big stick. The Void Raiders are about to learn something that every predator on Earth discovered long ago. Sometimes what looks like prey is actually a predator in disguise." In the background, the Lumen distress call continued its loop. "Please anyone, help us." But now those words carried a different weight. Help was coming, but it wasn't the kind of help anyone had expected. As the council session ended, Gray found himself wondering about the humans' response. Most species would have sent their kindest members, their most diplomatic voices, their gentlest helpers. The humans were sending their warriors. Gray wasn't sure if that made them monsters or heroes. Perhaps, he thought as he looked again at the image of the Nemesis, they were something else entirely, something the galaxy had no name for yet. But the Void Raiders would soon find out. Captain Reese stood perfectly still on the bridge of the HMS Nemesis, hands clasped behind her back. Through the main viewport, she watched stars stretch into lines as the ship cut through hyperspace. The bridge was quiet, except for the soft beeping of instruments and the occasional murmur of the crew at their stations. "Time to arrival?" Reese asked, her voice calm. 26 minutes, Captain," answered Lieutenant Foster from the communication station. The young officer continued. "The Lumen distress signal is still broadcasting. No change in the message." Reese nodded. 3 days of travel at maximum speed had brought them to the edge of the Haven system. 3 days during which the Void Raiders had continued their attack on a defenseless people. "Tactical display," Reese ordered. Commander Stone, the first officer, activated the holographic projector in the center of the bridge. A 3-dimensional map of the Haven system appeared, with the planet itself glowing a soft blue at the center. Red dots marked the positions of 7 Raider ships in orbit. "Their fleet is spread out," Stone observed. "No defensive formation, they're not expecting company." "Why would they?" Reese said. "The nearest Galactic Council outpost is 2 weeks away at top speed." "But we're not from the Council," Stone said with a small smile. "No," agreed Reese. "We're not." Dr. Wells, the ship's xenobiologist, entered the bridge with a datapad in hand. Her white lab coat stood out against the dark uniforms of the bridge crew. "Captain, I've completed my research on the Lumen," Wells said. "They're even more vulnerable than we thought." Reese gestured for Wells to continue. "The Lumen evolved on a world with no predators and no natural disasters," Wells explained, displaying images of tall, slender beings with faintly glowing skin. Their bodies produce natural light, bioluminescence, and they're telepathic within. Short ranges. "Telepathic?" Stone asked, suddenly concerned. "Will they be able to read our minds?" "Not exactly," Wells said. "They sense emotions and general thoughts, but they can't dig into memories or secrets. It's more like feeling the shape of someone's thoughts." "And what will they feel from us?" Reese asked quietly. Wells hesitated. "That's the problem, Captain. The Lumen have no concept of violence, none. Their entire evolution happened without it. When they sense our capacity for combat, our willingness to fight, it might frighten them as much as the Raiders do." Reese considered this information. "So we're going to rescue people who might be afraid of us. People who may not understand that we're trying to help." "Yes," Wells confirmed. "But there's something else. Their telepathy works both ways. When a Lumen is killed, all nearby Lumen feel it happen. The Raiders aren't just attacking them physically. They're causing psychological trauma with every death. The bridge fell silent as the crew processed this information. Reese's expression hardened. "Tell me about the raiders," she said. Stone adjusted the holographic display, bringing up images of various ships and alien beings. "The Void Raiders aren't a single species," Stone explained. "They're outcasts and criminals from a dozen different worlds who joined together under one leader, Commander Dusk." The display showed a tall, dark-skinned alien with 4 arms and eyes that glowed red. "Dusk was once a respected military officer in the Tarek fleet," Stone continued. "He was dishonorably discharged for excessive violence against civilians during a peacekeeping operation. Instead of accepting punishment, he stole a warship and disappeared into the outer systems. Over the years, he's gathered others like him, beings who enjoy causing pain." "Their tactics?" Reese asked. "Standard raid protocol," Stone replied. "They target developing worlds with valuable resources but limited defenses. They take what they want: minerals, technology, slaves, and destroy everything else. No witnesses, no consequences. Until now," Reese said quietly. The ship's navigator called out, "Preparing to exit hyperspace, Captain." "Battle stations," Reese ordered. Throughout the ship, lights dimmed to combat settings and alert signals sounded. Crew members moved with practiced efficiency to their positions. "Activate stealth systems upon exit," Reese continued. "No emissions, no transmissions. I want us completely invisible." "Stealth systems ready," reported the tactical officer. "Exit. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The stretched stars suddenly snapped back to points of light as the Nemesis dropped out of hyperspace at the very edge of the Haven system. The ship's special hull absorbed rather than reflected light, making it appear like a moving shadow against the stars. "Stealth systems active," confirmed the tactical officer. "We are running silent." "Long-range scanners," Reese ordered. The main view screen changed to show Haven in detail. It was a beautiful world of blue oceans and green continents, but even from this distance the crew could see dark smoke rising from several locations on the planet's surface. "Magnify," Reese said, her voice tight. The image zoomed in on one of the burning areas. It had once been a city, a collection of elegant crystal-like structures arranged in circular patterns. Now half of those structures were shattered or burning. Small ships moved between the buildings, landing to collect goods and captives before taking off again. "Life signs?" Reese asked. "Thousands of lumen life signatures concentrated in what appear to be detention areas," reported the sensor officer. "Raider forces are moving through the city systematically." Reese studied the tactical display, noting the positions of all 7 raider ships. One small vessel was currently separate from the others, positioned near the edge of the system on patrol duty. "Perfect," Reese murmured. She turned to Stone. "First, we need information. Target the isolated patrol ship. Approach course minimum power. Let's introduce ourselves." As the Nemesis glided silently through space toward the unsuspecting raider vessel, Reese opened a secure channel to the ship's special operations bay, where 12 soldiers in black combat armor were checking their equipment. "Sergeant Miller," Reese called. A tall, broad-shouldered soldier looked up at the screen. "Captain, prepare your team for ground deployment," Reese instructed. "Your primary objective is to secure Lumen hostages and gather intelligence on Raider. Ground forces. Rules of engagement?" Miller asked. "Protect the Lumen at all costs," Reese replied. "As for the Raider," she paused. "Use your judgment, Sergeant, but remember they started this, we're going to finish it." Miller nodded once, understanding perfectly. Back on the bridge, the Nemesis closed in on the lone Raider patrol ship, a vessel called the Viper according to its identification signal. The Raider crew had no idea they were being hunted. "In range, Captain," reported the tactical officer. Reese took a deep breath. This was the moment when the mission truly began. Until now, they had been observers. With her next order, they would become participants in a battle that would likely change this system forever. The Lumen had sent out a call for help, expecting aid workers, diplomats, or perhaps a few peacekeepers with limited weapons. Instead, they were getting the HMS Nemesis, one of Earth's most advanced warships, crewed by beings who had evolved on a world where danger lurked around every corner. where survival meant being stronger or smarter or faster than whatever was trying to kill you. Disengage stealth systems, Reese ordered. Target their engines only. I want that ship disabled, not destroyed. The black hull of the Nemesis suddenly lit up as its systems powered to full capacity. To the crew of the Viper, it must have seemed like a predator materializing out of nowhere. Open communications, Reese said. The raiders were about to learn an important lesson. Sometimes when you hunt the helpless, you attract the attention of something far more dangerous than your prey. Reese stepped forward, her voice clear and firm as she addressed the enemy. This is Captain Reese of the Earth vessel Nemesis. You are conducting illegal operations against a protected species. Surrender immediately. The hunt had begun. The bridge of the raider ship Viper fell silent as Captain Reese's face appeared on their main screen. The human's calm expression revealed nothing, but her words hung in the air like a threat. This is Captain Reese of the Earth vessel Nemesis. You are conducting illegal operations against a protected species. Surrender immediately. The Viper's captain, a scarred alien named Fang, recovered quickly from his surprise. Patch me through to Commander Dusk, he hissed to his communications officer. Moments later, Commander Dusk's face appeared on a secondary screen. His red eyes narrowed as Fang explained the situation. One ship? Dusk laughed, his voice deep and rough. The Galactic Council must be truly desperate to send a single vessel. Dusk moved his face closer to his camera, addressing the human captain directly. Tell your council masters that Haven belongs to the Void Raiders now. Leave while you still can. We're not from the council, Reese replied evenly. We're from Earth. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Dusk's face. Earth? The Death World? He paused, then shrugged with all four arms. Your reputation is exaggerated. One ship cannot stand against 7. Leave now, and we might allow it. Reese ended the transmission without responding. Commander Stone looked at her. They're not taking us seriously. Good, Reese said with a small smile. Target the Viper's engine section. Precision strike only. On the tactical screen, the crew watched as the Nemesis's targeting systems locked onto the raider vessel's propulsion systems. Fire, Reese ordered. A single energy beam lanced out from the Nemesis, striking the Viper with surgical precision. The raider ship's engines flared and died, leaving it drifting helplessly. Direct hit, reported the tactical officer. Their engines are disabled, life support intact. Now we have their attention, Reese said. All remaining raider ships are changing course to intercept us. 6 warships, each larger than the Nemesis, began moving to surround the human vessel, their weapons charged, glowing points of light against the blackness of space. They're forming a standard encirclement pattern, Stone observed. Predictable. Too predictable, Reese agreed. She turned to her navigation officer. Prepare hyperspace. Jump sequence Alpha. Target coordinates directly behind their command ship. The officer looked startled. Captain, a jump that short is extremely dangerous. The calculations have already been made, Reese interrupted. This is what we trained for, Lieutenant. As the raider ships closed in, their weapons reaching optimal firing range, Reese gave the order. Execute jump. The Nemesis vanished in sobbing, a flash of light only to reappear seconds later directly behind the largest raider vessel, Dusk's command ship, the Scourge. Fire at will, Reese commanded. The Nemesis unleashed a barrage of weapons fire at the Scourge's unprotected rear. Alarms blared on the raider vessels as they scrambled to adjust their formation. They're confused, Stone said with satisfaction. They've never seen a ship make a jump that precise within a system. Again, Reese ordered, jump sequence Beta. The Nemesis disappeared once more, reappearing above a different raider ship. More precision strikes followed. They're trying to predict our pattern, Stone noted as the raiders began firing wildly. There's no pattern, Reese replied. On Haven's surface, Sergeant Miller led his team of Special Forces soldiers through the ruins of what had once been a beautiful Lumen city. They had landed their stealth dropship in a forest clearing 5 kilometers from the largest detention center. Miller signaled his team to stop as they reached the edge of a clearing. Ahead, a large crystal structure had been converted into a prison. Raider guards patrolled the perimeter, while inside hundreds of lumen were visible, their softly glowing bodies making them easy to spot even from a distance. 6 guards at the main entrance, whispered Harris, the team's scout. 4 more on the roof, simple alarm system. Miller nodded. Standard formation, non-lethal takedowns if possible. Remember, the lumen will sense any deaths telepathically. The team split into 3 groups and moved silently through the shadows. Miller's group approached the main entrance using the cover of fallen crystal columns. The raiders, accustomed to facing no resistance, had grown careless in their guard duty. 2 were actually playing a game with small stones, while the others talked loudly among themselves. Miller gave the signal, and his team moved. They struck with quiet efficiency, stun weapons dropping 4 guards before they could react. The remaining 2 reached for their weapons but were quickly overwhelmed by the human speed and precision. In less than a minute, all guards were neutralized and Miller's team had control of the entrance. Main entrance secure, Miller reported through his communicator. Team 2, status? Roof secured, came the reply. No alarms triggered. Team 3, begin extraction. As Miller's soldiers moved into the detention center, they encountered something unexpected. The lumen prisoners were not cowering in fear, as might be expected. Instead, they were standing near the entrance, their bodies glowing with a strange pulsing light. An older lumen stepped forward, taller than the others, with skin that shimmered like sunlight on water. "We felt your minds approaching," the lumen said in a soft voice. "You are different." Miller lowered his weapon. "My name is Sergeant Miller. We're humans from Earth. We've come to help." The lumen studied him with large, luminous eyes. "Your minds are strange to us. Ordered yet chaotic. You intend violence, but for protection?" "That's right," Miller confirmed. "We're here to help, but we do things differently than you're used to." The lumen introduced himself as Bright, an elder of his people. "I have seen into the minds of the raiders," Bright said, his light dimming slightly. "There is only darkness there, hunger, and cruelty, but you—" He tilted his head curiously. "You contain both light and darkness in perfect balance." Before Miller could respond, alarms began to sound throughout the compound. Through the crystal walls, they could see more raider ships landing nearby. "They know we're here," Harris said tensely. "Protect the lumen," Miller ordered his team. "Defensive positions." As raiders poured into the detention center from multiple entrances, the human soldiers moved with practiced coordination. Unlike the lumen, who could only flee from violence, the humans engaged it with controlled precision. The raiders, expecting easy targets, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Miller's team used the crystal architecture for cover, setting traps and ambushes that confused and separated the attacking forces. Bright and the other lumen watched in astonishment as the humans fought. Where a lumen would panic or freeze, the humans remained calm. Where the raiders attacked with wild aggression, the humans responded with calculated efficiency. "How do they fight like this?" one raider commander shouted into his communicator as his forces fell back in disarray. "It's like they've been preparing for this their entire lives." From his position behind a fallen column, Miller spotted a group of raiders using their weapons to herd lumen prisoners as shields. He switched his rifle to stun setting and spoke quietly to Bright, who had remained nearby. "Can your people hear thoughts from a distance?" Miller asked. Bright's glow pulsed. "Yes, if we focus together." "We need a distraction," Miller explained, quickly. "Can your people send a message to all the lumen in that group at once? Tell them to drop to the ground on my signal?" Bright nodded, his light brightening with understanding. The elder lumen closed his eyes and several nearby lumen joined hands, their collective glow intensifying. Miller counted down on his fingers. 3, 2, 1. All at once, every lumen being held by the raiders dropped to the floor. In the split second of confusion that followed, Miller's team fired, dropping the surprised raiders with precise stun blasts. "It worked," Bright said, his voice filled with wonder. "We have never used our abilities this way before." Sometimes, seeing things differently is an advantage, Miller replied, already moving toward the next group of raiders. As the battle continued, the Lumen began to understand something profound about the humans. These strange beings from a world called Earth didn't just know how to fight. They had evolved with it, refined it, mastered it. The violence that so terrified the Lumen was, to humans, simply another skill to be used when necessary. And now, for the first time, the raiders were facing an enemy who could match their aggression with something more dangerous: discipline. Over his communicator, Miller heard the voice of Captain Reese. "Ground team, status report." "Primary detention center secured, Captain," Miller replied as his team rounded up the last of the surrendering raiders. "But there's something you should know." He looked at Bright and the gathered Lumen, who were now using their telepathic abilities to help locate hidden raiders. "The Lumen are helping us," Miller continued. "They can't fight, but they can be our eyes. I think we've just found some unexpected allies." Above them, in orbit, the battle between the Nemesis and the Raider fleet continued. But now a new kind of partnership was forming on the ground, one between a species that had never known violence and another that had mastered it completely. The Raiders had no idea what was coming next. 3 hours into the battle, the Nemesis took its first serious hit. A coordinated attack by 3 Raider ships caught the human vessel as it emerged from a hyperspace jump. Energy beams struck the port side, causing the ship to shudder violently. On the bridge, Captain Reese gripped her command chair as warning alarms blared. "Damage report." "Hull breach on Deck 3, reported Commander Stone, studying the damage control display. "Automatic seals engaged. Lieutenant Gray was injured. Medical team responding." "Shields at 62%, added the tactical officer. 2. Weapon systems offline. Reese's expression remained calm, but her eyes hardened. The Raiders were adapting to their tactics faster than expected. She needed to change her approach. "Status of Raider fleet?" she asked. 2 ships disabled, 5 still combat capable," Stone replied. "But they're starting to coordinate their attacks. Their command ship is directing the others to predict our jump points." Reese nodded thoughtfully. "Contact Sergeant Miller on the surface. I need an update." On Haven's surface, Miller and his team had secured 3 detention centers, freeing thousands of Lumen. But now they faced a new problem. The Raiders had fallen back to their main base, an ancient Lumen temple converted into a fortress. Intelligence, gathered from captured Raiders, confirmed that Commander Dusk himself had taken control of the ground operation. "Captain," Miller reported over his communicator, "we've secured most of the captive Lumen, but Dusk is using the remaining prisoners as hostages in the central temple. He's threatened to execute them if we advance further." Miller stood on a hill overlooking the temple. Beside him, Elder Bright and several other Lumen focused their telepathic abilities on the fortress, sensing what was happening inside. "There are 213 of our people inside," Bright said, his normally gentle voice strained. "They are frightened. The one called Dusk is angry. His mind burns with hatred." Reese's voice came through Miller's communicator. "Can you assault the temple?" "Not without risking the hostages," Miller replied. "The Raiders have set up explosive charges throughout the building. They're desperate." There was a pause before Reese spoke again. "Hold your position. I'm sending Dr. Wells to your location. She has an idea that might help." Less than 30 minutes later, a small shuttle landed near Miller's position. Dr. Wells emerged, carrying several equipment cases. The xenobiologist looked tired but determined as she approached Miller and Bright. "I've been studying the Lumen telepathic abilities," she explained, setting down her equipment, "and I think there's a way we can use them to our advantage." Wells opened one case, revealing devices that resembled small silver discs. "These are neural disruptors, designed to interfere with specific brain patterns. We use them for medical purposes, but with some adjustments." She looked at Bright. "Your people can communicate telepathically. Can you also project sensations, images, feelings?" Bright's glow pulsed thoughtfully. "We can share emotions and simple images with those who are receptive. But the Raiders' minds are closed to us, too chaotic, too violent." "You don't need to connect with their minds," Wells said. You just need to create enough telepathic noise to confuse their equipment. She pointed to devices mounted around the temple. Those are sensor arrays. They detect movement, heat, even neural activity. But they can't distinguish between real signals and telepathic projections. Miller understood immediately. A diversion. If the Lumen create enough telepathic activity, the Raiders' sensors will be overwhelmed, Wells finished. They won't be able to tell what's real and what's not. Bright looked at the other Lumen who had gathered to listen. We have never used our abilities this way before, as a weapon. Not a weapon, Wells corrected gently. A shield. Protection for your people inside. After a moment of silent communication among themselves, Bright nodded. We will try. While Wells worked with the Lumen, Miller gathered his team. We need a way into that temple that the Raiders won't expect. An elderly female Lumen named Shimmer approached. There are passages beneath the temple, ancient ways known only to our priests. I can show you. In orbit, the Nemesis continued its hit-and-run attacks against the Raider fleet, but Captain Reese knew her ship couldn't sustain this pace much longer. Damage was accumulating, and the Raiders were getting better at anticipating their movements. Captain, Stone said quietly, we need a new strategy. Reese studied the tactical display. The 5 remaining Raider ships had formed a tight defensive formation around Dusk's command vessel. They were no longer chasing the Nemesis, conserving their energy, and waiting for the human ship to attack. They think they've figured us out, Reese said with a slight smile. Let's show them something new. She turned to her communications officer. Open a channel to Sergeant Miller. Beneath the ancient temple, Miller led his team through narrow tunnels that hadn't been used in centuries. The passages were tight, forcing the humans to crouch as they moved. Shimmer guided them, her natural glow providing just enough light to see. The temple was built over a natural cave system, Shimmer explained. Our ancestors used these passages for meditation and private ceremonies. The tunnels eventually led to a vertical shaft. Miller's helmet scanner indicated they were directly beneath the temple's central chamber. This is it, Shimmer whispered. The chamber of light lies above us. There is a hidden entrance behind the altar. Miller checked his chronometer. Everybody, in position. Remember, we move on my mark, not before. His communicator beeped softly. Sergeant, came Captain Reese's voice. We're ready up here. Operation begins in 5 minutes. Understood, Captain. We're in position. Miller turned to Shimmer. Return to Bright and the others. Tell them to be ready. After the Lumen departed, Miller addressed his team. This will be close-quarters combat with hostages present. Precision is everything. Captain Reese is about to give the Raiders something else to worry about, and the Lumen will blind their sensors. Our job is to get in, secure the hostages, and capture Dusk if possible. The soldiers checked their weapons one final time. Unlike their earlier encounters, this would be the most dangerous part of the mission. The Raiders would be cornered, desperate, and under the direct command of Dusk, a trained military commander. On a hillside overlooking the temple, Bright, Wells, and over 100 Lumen had gathered in concentric circles. They sat with hands linked, their bodies glowing. With increasing intensity, focus your thoughts, Wells guided them. Don't try to reach individual minds, instead project your emotions outward, like ripples in water. The Lumen began to pulse with light, their natural bioluminescence growing stronger. The air around them seemed to shimmer with energy. That's it, Wells encouraged. Keep building the energy. In orbit, Captain Reese gave her boldest order yet. Power down all systems. Make it look like we've suffered catastrophic damage. The bridge lights dimmed as the Nemesis went dark, appearing dead in space. Only minimal life support and internal communications remained active. Now we drift, Reese said softly, right into the heart of their formation. The Nemesis, its black hull nearly invisible against the backdrop of space, began to float toward the Raider fleet like a piece of debris. The Raiders, seeing the human ship apparently disabled, maintained their defensive posture but didn't fire. They think we're dead, Stone whispered. Let them keep thinking that, Reese replied, until it's too late. Miller's chronometer reached 0. Go. Simultaneously, 3 things happened. In orbit, the seemingly dead Nemesis suddenly roared back to life in the middle of the Raider formation, all weapons firing at point-blank range. On the hillside, the gathered Lumen released a massive telepathic surge that overwhelmed every sensor in and around the temple. To the Raiders inside, it appeared as if thousands of beings were approaching from all directions. And beneath the temple, Miller's team burst through the hidden entrance into the Chamber of Light, catching the Raiders in a moment of complete confusion. The chamber was vast, with a domed ceiling covered in crystal formations that reflected light in dazzling patterns. Lumen hostages huddled in the center, surrounded by Raider guards. On a raised platform stood Commander Dusk, his 4 arms gesturing wildly as he shouted, "Orders! What's happening?" Dusk roared as alarms blared and his guards stumbled in confusion. "The sensors are detecting movement everywhere." At that moment, Miller's team struck. Stun blasts dropped the nearest Raiders before they could react. Others turned to fight, but the humans moved with coordinated precision, each soldier covering the others as they advanced. Dusk saw what was happening and grabbed the nearest Lumen hostage, a child whose light flickered in terror. "Stop or I'll kill this one," he shouted, pressing a weapon against the child's head. Miller aimed his rifle but couldn't risk the shot. The other Raiders, seeing their commander's example, also seized hostages. For a moment, everything hung in balance. The human soldiers couldn't advance without endangering the hostages, but the Raiders couldn't escape. Then, something unexpected happened. The Lumen hostages, connected telepathically to Bright and the others outside, acted together, as if receiving a silent signal. Every Lumen in the chamber suddenly flared with blinding light. The Raiders, unused to the intense brightness, recoiled and shielded their eyes. In that brief moment, Miller's team struck. Precision shots dropped. The disoriented Raiders one by one. Dusk, still holding the Lumen child, back toward an exit. "Stay back," he warned. Miller lowered his weapon slightly. "It's over, Dusk. Your fleet is being destroyed as we speak. Surrender, and you'll be treated according to galactic law." "Treated by what law?" Dusk snarled. "The law of the strong? Because that's the only law that matters out here." "No," Miller replied calmly. "The law that protects the weak from predators like you." As they faced each other, the child in Dusk's grasp suddenly went completely dark, stopping its glow entirely. Surprised, Dusk glanced down, and in that split second of distraction, Miller fired. The stun blast hit Dusk squarely, and he collapsed. Throughout the chamber, the Raiders were being secured by Miller's team. The Lumen hostages, their glow returning to normal, embraced each other in relief. Miller approached the child who had been held by Dusk. The young Lumen looked up at him with large, luminous eyes. "You stopped your light," Miller said, impressed. "How did you know to do that?" The child's glow pulsed gently. "I felt it in your mind. The darkness that hides the light. Sometimes to be safe one must be silent." Miller nodded, understanding dawning. The Lumen were learning from the humans, just as the humans were learning from them. His communicator activated with Captain Reese's voice. "Ground team, status?" "Temple secured, Captain," Miller reported. "Dusk is in custody. All hostages safe." "Well, done," Reese replied. "The Raider fleet has been neutralized. The Haven system is secure." Miller looked around the ancient chamber, where humans and Lumen now stood together in victory. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now," Reese said, "we show the galaxy what happens when someone sends a distress call to Earth." 3 days after the battle, a Galactic Council ship arrived at Haven. The sleek diplomatic vessel named Harmony entered orbit cautiously. Its scanners showed the remains of the Raider fleet, disabled ships drifting under guard by the HMSE Nemesis, which still bore the scars of combat on its dark hull. Ambassador Gray stood nervously on the Harmony's observation deck, watching as a shuttle from the Nemesis approached their docking bay. He had come expecting to find devastation, perhaps even to conduct rescue operations for any surviving Lumen. The Council had sent medical teams, aid workers, and a small security force. What Gray hadn't expected was to find the Raider threat completely neutralized, the Lumen population largely intact, and reconstruction already underway. "I still don't understand how they did it," Gray murmured to Admiral Pike, who stood beside him. "One ship against 7, a dozen soldiers against hundreds of raiders." Pike didn't answer immediately. The old military officer had suspected the humans might be effective, but even he hadn't imagined such a decisive victory. "Perhaps," Pike said finally, "we've underestimated them." The shuttle docked and Captain Reese emerged. She wore her formal uniform, but her face showed signs of exhaustion beneath her professional demeanor. Ambassador Gray, Admiral Pike, Reese greeted them with a small bow. "Welcome to Haven." Gray stepped forward, extending his thin hands in the traditional council greeting. "Captain Reese, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I offer our sincere gratitude for your intervention." Reese accepted the gesture politely. "My crew performed admirably, but there's someone else you should meet." She turned and gestured to the shuttle. Elder Bright emerged, his light pulsing gently. Several council members gasped. They had expected to find the Lumen traumatized, hiding from violence they couldn't understand. Instead, Bright stood tall, his glow strong and steady. "Greetings, Ambassador," Bright said. "The Lumen of Haven welcome the Galactic Council." Gray fumbled for words. "Elder Bright, we came prepared to offer emergency aid and evacuation if necessary, but it seems that we are rebuilding rather than fleeing." Bright finished with a gentle pulse of light that indicated amusement. "Yes, thanks to our human allies." Gray looked from Bright to Reese, confusion evident on his face. "Allies? But the Lumen abhor violence, and humans are quite capable of it," Reese acknowledged. "But capability doesn't equal desire, Ambassador. We did what was necessary to protect the Lumen. Nothing more." "I'd like to see the situation on the surface," Admiral Pike interjected. Reese nodded. "Of course, we can depart immediately." The Council delegation's shuttle descended toward Haven's largest city. From above, they could see the damage done by the raiders, burned buildings, shattered crystal towers, scarred land where mining equipment had torn up the soil, but they could also see activity everywhere. Humans and Lumen worked side by side, clearing debris and setting up temporary structures. Some areas already showed signs of rebuilding. The shuttle landed in a cleared area near the temple. Sergeant Miller stood waiting with several of his team, members and a group of Lumen, including the child who had helped capture Dusk. As Gray and the other council members stepped out, they stared in amazement at the scene around them. Humans in work clothes operated machinery that moved heavy debris, while Lumen used their natural abilities to illuminate darkened areas and communicate across distances. "This is unexpected," Gray admitted, as Miller led them toward the temple. "We thought the Lumen would be traumatized by exposure to violence, that they would fear the humans." Miller glanced at the child walking beside him. "They were afraid at first," he acknowledged, "but not anymore." Inside the temple, the Chamber of Light had been converted into a command center. Maps and holographic displays showed reconstruction plans. Humans and Lumen moved about with purpose, working together with surprising efficiency. "I don't understand," Gray said, watching a human engineer explain a structural repair to a group of attentive Lumen. "How did you overcome their natural aversion to your warlike nature?" Bright, who had joined them, answered, "Ambassador, the Lumen have existed for thousands of years without experiencing violence. When the raiders came, we had no defense against their cruelty." His light dimmed slightly at the memory. "We feared the humans at first, yes. Their minds contain darkness we do not possess." The elder Lumen's glow brightened again. "But we learned something important. The darkness in humans is balanced by light. They can imagine terrible violence, yet choose peace. They prepare for the worst while working for the best," Miller added. "And we learned from the Lumen, too. They've shown us different ways to solve problems, ways that don't always involve force. Gray looked skeptical. And what happens when you leave? The raiders may be gone, but there are others like them in the galaxy. We're not leaving, Reese said simply. Not entirely. The captain led them to another part of the temple, where a formal document was displayed. The Lumen have asked for a permanent human presence on Haven, a small security force, technical advisors, and cultural exchange. Pike read the document with interest. This is a formal alliance treaty. The first of its kind between Earth and another species, Reese confirmed. Already approved by our government. Ambassador Gray appeared concerned. The Council wasn't consulted on this matter. With respect, Ambassador, Bright interjected gently. Haven is a sovereign Lumen colony. We may choose our own allies. Gray looked from the Lumen Elder to Captain Reese, finally understanding the significance of what had happened. This wasn't just a rescue mission. It was first contact between two species who, despite their differences, had found value in each other. Later that evening, as the sun set over Haven, a small ceremony took place in the temple gardens. The Lumen performed a traditional light dance, their bodies creating patterns of incredible beauty in the growing darkness. The humans watched in appreciation, their usual military discipline relaxed for once. Ambassador Gray found Captain Reese, standing apart from the others, looking up at the stars. Your mission here is complete, Captain, Gray said. The Council will ensure proper recognition for your service. Reese smiled slightly. That's not why we came, Ambassador. Then why did Earth respond so quickly to a distress call from a species you'd never even met? Because they asked for help, Reese said simply. And on Earth we believe that when someone asks for help, you help them. It's that simple. Gray considered this. Admiral Pike mentioned this trait of yours. He called it a compulsion. Perhaps it is, Reese acknowledged. On our world, those who could help others but choose not to are considered lacking something essential. They watched as a human child and a Lumen child played together near a fountain, the human teaching the Lumen a game with small stones, while the Lumen created tiny light patterns that the human tried to catch. The Council feared you, Gray admitted, quietly. When Earth joined us 5 years ago, many believed it was only a matter of time before humans tried to dominate through force. Your world, your history. They're so different from the rest of us. Yes, Reese agreed. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We had to become strong to survive. She watched the playing children with a soft expression. But strength doesn't have to be frightening, Ambassador. It can also protect. In the garden, more humans and Lumen had joined the children's game, laughing and glowing in the growing darkness. Your ships are called His Majesty's ship, Gray noted. Nemesis is a name from human mythology, is it not? The goddess of retribution. Yes, Reese nodded, but also of balance and harmony. She brought retribution to those who needed it, but protection to those who deserved it. As they watched the celebration, Admiral Pike approached with a data crystal in hand. Captain Reese, this just arrived from Earth. 3 more human ships are being dispatched to Haven. They're bringing construction equipment, medical supplies, and teachers. Teachers? Gray questioned. The Lumen want to learn from us, Miller explained, joining the conversation. And we want to learn from them. They understand harmony in ways we don't. We understand protection in ways they don't. The human sergeant looked toward where Commander Dusk was being held in a secure facility, awaiting transport to a Council prison planet. The raiders thought the Lumen were easy targets because they couldn't fight back. What they didn't understand was that sometimes when you threaten the peaceful, you attract the attention of the warriors. In the night sky above them, stars glittered like distant beacons. Somewhere out there, Earth continued its own journey among the stars, a death world whose inhabitants had mastered both war and peace, violence and compassion. The Lumen's distress call had reached the Deathworlders. They hadn't sent aid workers. They hadn't sent diplomats. They had sent warriors in a dangerous ship, and in doing so they had brought not just rescue but possibility. the beginning of something new in the galaxy. A partnership between a species that understood perfect peace and one that understood necessary violence. As the celebration continued into the night, the light of the lumen merged with the shadows of the humans, creating patterns neither species could have made alone.